everybody, I'm Scott, also known as Brady Online. So if you ever follow me, that's the alias I use. I've got a couple of WordPress plugins out in the open, WordPress File Monitor Plus and WP Updates Notifier. Those plugins I haven't spent a lot of time on for over 2 years, but they still work. Feel free to use them. But I am actually looking for people to take them over, so if you're looking at getting into a bit of plugin development and you think you can add something to these plugins, let me know and I'll hand the development over to you. I'm a full-time developer at Big Fish. We work with clients Yo Valley, Dorset Cereals, Crisps. I'm sure most of you have most probably heard them or enjoyed some of their products. For most of our clients we use WordPress and we build a lot of WordPress plugins for those clients. Luckily for us, our clients all have very similar needs, so we're able to build plugins that are reusable across all our clients. Also, Big Fish are hiring for a developer like me, so if you're interested and you can do things like what I'm about to show you and you're looking for a job, check out the job ad and apply. So, why do we need a private GitHub plugin updater? So we have a lot of private plugins that we use at Big Fish. The screenshot there is a bit cut off, but there's an example of loads of them. We've got things like plugins for prize draws, things for instant wins, everything that a user could possibly win, voting mechanics, photo competitions, you name it, we've got a plugin for it, and they're all kept in their own individual repository, so we have our own issue tracker for each of the plugins. If a client wants a particular new feature for it, we put it on there, we develop it, and then once that's deployed to GitHub as a feature, then we like to then roll that out to all of our clients, so all of our clients get the benefit of a feature that one of our clients wanted. We like the ease that WordPress gives us with the one-click updates, and so when you go into the admin, you instantly see, right, these plugins need updating, and with a click of a button you can update them. But bear in mind, this is just for public plugins that are on the WordPress plugin repo at the moment. Also, if you're using the built-in WordPress plugin updater, you can use other services like WP Remote, I can't think of the other names.
Managed WP.
Yeah, Managed WP. They're all like services that can hook into all of your client sites, and you can at a quick glance see which plugins need updating. So if we're using the built-in WordPress way, we can use those services. So are there any other solutions out there for what we need with a private plugin updater? Bearing in mind, this was back when we were looking at it, so this was maybe about a year ago, to be honest. So what about using the WordPress repository? It has this like great search feature, and now with your user you can favorite your plugins, and so when you come to install a new WordPress installation, you can, if you're logged in, you can see all of your plugins that are favorited. Great, one-click install. Unfortunately, it uses Subversion rather than Git. We're Big Fish, we just use Git, so Subversion doesn't fit with us. But obviously the big thing that kills it, and obviously you're all aware, is it doesn't have private repositories, and it's unlikely that it will ever support that. So straight away that's ruled out for us. What about using Git submodules? All of our sites are in Git, all of our plugins are in Git as well. Couldn't we just load them up with submodules and use, commands just to update our plugins? Well, with that, unfortunately, we lose the ability to use the plugin update system that WordPress gives us, all of the features we just talked about. It's not straightforward to update. Anybody use Git submodules here? Yeah, they're not that easy to use. It's a whole other set of commands that you've got to know and understand, and yeah, it's using from the command line. And also, we would have to give all our in-house developers access to all of the individual GitHub repositories where all our plugins are housed, which, you know, we have like front-end developers, back-end developer myself. So these plugins are developed by back-end developers, so they've got access to them, but the front-enders don't, because they're not the ones, you know, adding features, developing to them, but they're the ones deploying the sites, building themes and stuff. So if we were to use submodules, they would need permissions to these repositories to be able to pull the code and install them. So that one's out. At the time, there was a GitHub plugin update that already exists. It works in testing, but it said it supported private repositories, but it didn't when we tested it anyway. We just couldn't get it to work. Also, it was incredibly slow. It was poorly coded. Every admin page that you went through, it would call GitHub and check for an update. Again, just poorly coded, and if you've got, as like we do, you know, maybe 15 plugins on a site, every page load was then doing 15 checks to GitHub. So yeah, we weren't happy with it, and we thought we could develop a plugin ourselves quite easily, and yeah, that's what we went with. So yeah, let's build our own solution. So what do we need to know, and yeah, what do we need to do to build our own solution? We need to figure out how WordPress checks for updates, figure out how to detect updates available on GitHub, and then basically pull the code from GitHub, hook that into WordPress, and get it to use that code that is pulled from WordPress. So let's have a look under the hood of WordPress and see how we can start to piece this together. So where do we look in the source code? So I use PHP Storm as my IDE, my editor, and we put WordPress in its own submodule, so we don't mix it in with our with the WP content. That's kept separate. So we're just looking at the source code, so it's just straight into that WP folder and just having a look through and seeing if we can find a file that maybe looks sensible to look into. So we actually went into WP admin includes plugin install. Sounds like a good place to start. So did we find anything? So in that file there was this particular function, and it's got this little bit of comment. Check to see if the plugin is known to be installed and has an update waiting. That sounds interesting, that should be it. And it's got, it pulls a transient. I'm not going to try and explain that. If you know what it is, great. But basically it's pulling some information and it's storing it in update variables in a transient. So yeah, that seems to be... Can't think how I zoom out. There we go. So yeah, that seems like a good place to start. So let's search for that transient update plugins. So looking through the source code again, we come along to this function here called WP update plugins. So I'm just going to quickly try and explain this code. Not that much. There we go. So coming through, it's pulling a load of files that it needs. It's seeing what plugins it's got available to itself, and you can see here it's pulling that transient again, so it's pulling out some information about plugin updates. Coming down here, not that interesting. Here it's basically doing some checking of when it last checked for plugin updates, doing a lot of comparing, updating when it was last checked, and then it's writing back to that update plugins, coming down, some more bits and pieces, but this is the interesting bit where it starts to actually call WordPress's APIs. So these are plugins that are on the public repository. WordPress, when it's looking for updates, will call the public repository. It'll send some variables about what the plugin is. So even if your plugin is not on the repository, it'll still send the information about what plugins are installed, and it'll send it to it, and if it finds it on there, it'll come back saying there's an update. So just looking through, it's making the call. And one thing to know here is if you do have a private repository, and although you might not put your plugin up on the public repo, but if it actually has the same name or the same file makeup, WordPress is not intelligent to know that's not the same plugin. So if you've got version 1 of your private plugin, but somebody has published a plugin that has the same name but releases an update of like 1.4, WordPress will tell you there's an update to your plugin, and you go update plugin, and next thing you know it's replacing your plugin with somebody else's of a different version. So if you are making private plugins, make sure you name it uniquely. Use some letters like your initials or something in there, so the chances of somebody else publishing the same plugin is going to be higher. But anyway, coming down here, it's done the response. It's got some data back from WordPress to say whether it exists, and it returns back like what version it is, where can you download the new content from, and then right at the end, once it's got all that data, it puts it into this transient again called update plugins. So what's in this transient when it's being set? Now, anybody that develops with WordPress regularly knows that in the set transient and get transient functions, there's things called filters, and you can actually filter these values. So wrote some code, added a filter on the preset site transient update plugins, and this is what came back. Now this is a bit cut down. I deliberately made sure one of my plugins had an update available, so you can see here Advanced Custom Fields was there. So the public repository came back and said this is the plugin that has an update, this is its new version, this is the URL to the plugin, and this is where you download the new zip. And also it did have a load of data of no updates, but I've just cut that out. So if WordPress is giving that information back, can we fake a plugin update? Because we've added a filter to this set transient, before we set it, let's alter the content and put in our own response. So I created this our test plugin and filtered the content that WordPress was getting from its repository and just put this in. Next thing you know, when you come to the plugins updates page, my plugin was showing a new update and saying that the new version was 99.99.99, and basically just saying this is where to get it from, or this is not a real URL. So we've managed to fake our plugin update. So now we just actually need to find a way to get real information about when a plugin can be updated, feed it into WordPress, and when you click update, it will go to that package URL, download it and update your code. So because we want to pull from GitHub, we now need to figure out how can we get this information from GitHub. So some Googling later, over the API we can get the zip file. So api.github.com/repos/the user, so in our case big fish, /the repository. So we've got like prize draws, whatever, zip file, and then the branch. So you can actually specify a different branch. So if you've got like a release branch, but we just use master, so we pass in master. And then also because it's a private repository, it's not public, you've got to pass an access token. Now, I'll show later how you actually get that access token if you're interested in doing it. But that's the URL to get the zip. So on that plugin update that we faked, we can pass this zip URL and it will go grab that for you. Also of the API, we can actually pull plugin code. So if we want to actually get the contents of a plugin on the repository. So similar makeup, but you can pass the file, again the branch and the token. So just using that API of getting the file contents, here's one of my plugins that's on GitHub. Again, this is public, so I didn't need to pass the access token. One of the things that I brought back was the content of the file here. This is the JSON format. The content of the file is actually base64 encoded. So decoding base64 content in PHP is relatively easy. You just use base64 decode, and what do we get back? We get our plugin file, and at the top of that is our header of the plugin. So whenever you're developing plugins for WordPress, you'll set your name, where to get it, some description, what version it is. WordPress actually has a way of reading these file headers. Well, that's how it updates its themes and its plugins, is by reading this information. And that file, that function is get plugin data. So you pass in the file, and what that should return. Okay, I'll come to that. The thing is that the get plugin data only accepts a file, but what we've got is a string of text of our file. So what we need to do is actually write that to a file for this function to use it. So it's as simple as decoding the content, creating a temporary file, writing the contents of that file, and then that file you pass to the function. So did it work? Yeah. And what did it return? So that function now has read that file, and we've got the version number and all the other bits and pieces, but we're only interested in the version number, and that's pulled directly from GitHub. So that's live as it is on GitHub. So if I push the new code to GitHub with a new version number in that plugin, the next time I run this code, it'll pull down the file, decode it, and give you the version number that we need to use to check and compare it to the version that's on our site installed currently. So, comparing versions, we have the version on a local, and we've got the version from GitHub. So we can use a PHP function called version compare. Basically you put the two version numbers in, and it tells which one's newer, and it'll work around the thing of like 1.1.1 or and different sort of versioning numbers. So whatever your method is, it'll work out which one's higher. So the thing is, if the version on GitHub is newer, all we need to now do is tell that transient that we've been looking at to say, yes, there's an update, this is the new version, and this is where you get the zip file to download. We do have a problem with the GitHub download zip though. The zip folder contains a folder named WP updates notifier-the branch. So on WordPress we've installed it as WP updates notifier, but what GitHub is providing us is adding the branch name on the end of the folder. So if we gave WordPress this URL to download it, the way plugin updates work is it deletes the plugin, so the whole folder, and replaces it with your new one. So if it does that, removes your old plugin, puts in your new one, but it's named wrong, it's not the same one. So you can't activate it, and now because you've updated, you've got a plugin that's no longer active, and because it's in a different folder, you might run into other problems like trying to update it again. So we need to fix that. So how are we going to do that? We don't know how WordPress is unpacking that, so we're going to fire up our debugger in PHP Storm. So we're using PHP Storm and Xdebug, and we can step through the code in real time as it runs. Basically what we're doing is looking through the code and seeing at what point does WordPress download that file and then unpack it, and then let's see if WordPress gives us an opportunity to filter or change some part of that method. I'm not going to demo it. It's pretty cool. Well, I find it pretty cool, but if you're starting from scratch, you don't know where to hook into. It can be quite tedious, quite boring. So yeah, we'll skip over that. But let's just say we've done all that, and I've come across this filter, upgrader post install. It's another WordPress filter that runs when the plugin's updated, and what it does is this filter passes some information to say this is where I've put the installed plugin. So inside that filter, all we can do is say, where have you put that folder, which we know is named incorrectly, and just move that folder to the correctly named folder. So that's all that line is doing. So what I'm going to do is just have a quick look through our final code. So we've now looked into WordPress to see how it's updating. We've looked into GitHub to see how to get our code, and we've fixed the problem of WordPress not putting it in the right place. So this sort of first bit is just a way of telling our code of plugins that we own, and we pass to it our parameters for what plugin it holds on the private repository, what's the access token, and so on. So each plugin hooks into this bit of code. I'm just going to gloss over this. These slides will be available, so if you want to look at this in a little bit more detail, that's fine. So each plugin that needs updating runs an instance of our updater. So coming through here, each plugin hooks into this preset site, transient update plugins again, and also the upgrader post install. So we do check for update, we pull the information from GitHub, so we're trying to get this header information from GitHub so we can find out what version resides on GitHub. We do a check to see if the plugin needs updating, and if it does, then we need to build up this transient response for WordPress to deal with. So that's that. Getting the plugin information, it's basically just using a WordPress HTTP API, going to that URL, retrieving it, decoding the JSON that comes back, decoding the contents of the file, putting the contents of the file in a temporary file, and then getting the plugin data. Doing this, does it need updating? Again, it's just using this function called version compare. So comparing against the version that currently exists and the version that's on the repository. And then this is just basic building a transient if it does need updating. So this is just in the format that WordPress expects. And then this is correcting the folder name once it has grabbed the zip file. Obviously we've got like checks in there to make sure we're grabbing or hooking the right plugin, and we're not altering somebody else's method of upgrading. And that's just doing the move. So, how do we get this GitHub access token? So if you want to update your own plugins and you want to use this code, this is the easiest way that I found, is basically to log into your GitHub account, go to your settings, go to applications, and in applications there's create a new personal access token. For this you should only need repo and public repo access, because all it needs to do is be able to read the code. It doesn't need to see comments, it doesn't need to see, there's a lot of other privileges and I can't remember off the top of my head. And then once you've done that, copy the token somewhere safe, because once it's shown to you and you've copied it and you click off it, you don't see it again. So make sure you put it in your text editor or where you're going to be using it. So with what I've shown you here, it's not exactly feature complete. There are lots of other things you can do to enhance this, and maybe you want to go away and add those yourself. When you update a plugin and you click on it for details, you can actually see normally a changelog, and what that does is it reads the README file on WordPress-Focused server, and if a developer's been nice, he'll put in there and say, you know, what's changed. This doesn't account for any of that, so if you try clicking the changelog using this, it just comes up with an error and says it can't find it, because it doesn't actually exist on the WordPress repository. So again, there's ways of hooking into WordPress and seeing when it makes that request, getting in there and faking your own response. This, you have to create that personal access token. You could do things where your plugin uses OAuth, so on your WordPress site you just maybe click a button and say authenticate with GitHub, and from there you just log into GitHub and it creates that token for you and stores it in the plugin, so it's something else you can do. Other things are, you could use things like Git tags, so instead of reading this header file information, if you, every time you release a new plugin, if you use tags in Git, maybe you could use that, write some code that reads Git, see what the latest tags were, and then compare that to the version you've got. So it's another method you could use. So where can you get this plugin? Sorry, you can't. It's not complete, and it was built for internal use. You're welcome to use the code that I've shown you here. Again, say the slides will be available. But what I would say is, because when we looked at doing this a year ago, there wasn't any solutions out there, but now I actually had a look today. Check out this plugin. It seems very feature complete. It does everything that we've talked about plus more. There is a developer here. Is he still here? This guy has been a regular committer on this plugin. You can vouch for it. I haven't actually tested this, but
it was mentioned on WP Tavern a week and a half ago as well, because it had one of the updates to it. But it works with Git tags and support private repos and
So if you've got your own plugins that you want to publish to your clients, but they're private, check this out. Does all that for you. So where can you get the slides? That's where. I will tweet out the link if you don't get time to copy that down. Questions, anybody?
Very, very short in time.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for doing the Updates Notifier plugin many years ago. Great, I've used it on lots and lots of sites. My question though is, how does your approach differ sort of the premium plugins that have their own updating mechanisms? Are they kind of using broadly similar things? Or
they'll be using the same hooks and filters to inject their methods, whether they use GitHub or whether they deploy their code to a server, and then all they're doing is in their plugins, injecting into it. And like Gravity Forms, for example, is maybe one comes straight to mind. You have like an access key or your subscription. So that's just basically doing the same thing. Is that, but when it checks their update server, it's passing your key and it's checking that you've got a valid subscription. If you've got one, then it will tell WordPress there's an update. If you haven't, then that communication never happens and the plugin will never update.
So everyone's having to sort of rework this out themselves, like you had to.
Yeah,
quite a painful process.
Yeah,
and figure out their own way of injecting it, overriding, and
yeah.
injecting it.
Yeah. Do we have
I'm
time?
really sorry, guys.
You can ask me down the pub if you want.
Thank you.
No.